Roughly 3.5 years ago, I made what quickly became one of my absolutely most watched episodes ever, the Cheap Minis Runewars Miniatures game video. However, despite me lauding the set as one of the best products you can spend money on if you're starting out your miniatures collection, I never got around to painting most of the miniatures in it. Well, that has finally been rectified, so let's take another look at this set. Does it still hold up? Welcome to the Creative Kobold, I'm Gaira, and today we're taking a second look at the Runewars Miniatures game core set. Despite absolutely loving the designs for the sculpts, not to mention the low cost of the miniatures, I've just finally gotten around to painting them. With several years of experience between that video and now, does this set still hold up? Well, the short answer is yes, they absolutely do. But the set isn't perfect. So let's get into the nitty-gritty of it. Like I've said in the original video, as well as in several public discussions online, I really like the designs and the sculpts in Runewars. This has not changed. The miniatures have lots of detail without it being too much. Most details are quite uniform, which I appreciate. The details and features on each miniature are also clearly separated from each other and easily identified. The costs are where the Runewars miniatures dip a bit in quality, however. First off, there are some unseemly seam lines that would take a lot of work to fix. And a quick note, I didn't bother with any but the absolute worst offenders. You can also see some very slight misalignment on each side of a few of those seams. Plastic used for these minis also means details aren't as sharp as something like high-impact polystyrene, and some of the smallest details can blur slightly into the surface it's on. It's generally on par with official D&D minis from WizKids and Hasbro. On a more positive note, each mini is made up of only 2 or 3 pieces and they slot very easily into each other. So the minis are a breeze to assemble, especially compared to most wargames, for example Warhammer. You don't even need to cut them off sprues as the pieces all come loose and ready to be assembled. The minis generally come on 25mm round bases, perfect for most TTRPGs. Cavalry comes on 25 by 50mm rounded rectangle bases, which is how I personally prefer bases for horses and other large horse-like creatures, as it makes more sense than a 50mm round base, and is a lot more practical. The large Runewars minis, like the Rune Golem and Carrion Lancer, come on 50mm rounded square bases, which are okay even though I prefer those on round bases, and also consider both of these to be huge-sized creatures. Unlike most other Runewars minis, however, the bases for the large miniatures do not come attached, meaning you can just choose to not use them, like me. Interestingly, the 2 hero or leader miniatures have separate 50mm bases that they can slot into. Not very useful as is for D&D, but they could have some value if you're into tabletop crafting or as small diorama stands for any of your RPG player characters when they're not in use. Now that I have actually painted up all of these miniatures, how easy are they actually to get ready for the table? Well, the Runewars minis paint up quite easily. Despite some minor quality drop from the casting process, the clear details and features sculpted into the miniatures makes them very easy to work with. With the details being more uniform instead of random bits and bobs, you also don't have to switch paint colors a lot, which generally saves a lot of time. Of course, there are certainly details you could paint in different colors, but then you'd also be likely to do this for the entire army. A minor downside is that once assembled, features like capes or shields can make it hard to reach certain areas of the mini. This means you might want to paint certain pieces up before assembling. On the other hand, the hard-to-reach areas will also be hard to see, so it's really not that much of a problem for anyone but the biggest perfectionists. In general, these are very easy to paint, with the choice to spend more time on details if you want to. The Runewars miniatures game core set comes with 48 miniatures divided into two armies, the human factions of the Dakan Lords and the undead legion of Waikar the Undying. The human army comes with 12 spear-wielding foot soldiers, 4 sword-wielding horse-riding cavalry, 1 huge-sized 4-armed multiple swords-wielding rune golem, and a single sword and dagger-wielding hero. The skeletal undead army comes with 6 sword-wielding foot soldiers, 6 axe-wielding foot soldiers, 8 archers, 1 huge-sized carrion crawler with rider, and a single dual axe-wielding hero. There are also other sets available, including 2 other armies, the Elven Latari and the Demonic Uthuk. The armies also have expansion sets for units. Personally, I've gotten myself a handful of extra Runewars minis, an extra cavalry soldier, a foot soldier standard bearer, a couple of extra skeletons, and the Aimhelin Skion from the Latari army. One of the best things about the Runewars core set is that aside from the 2 big minis, all the miniatures in the set are completely compatible with TTRPGs like Pathfinder or D&D right out of the box. The human soldiers are perfect for any of your army soldier or town's watch needs. The cavalry soldiers are perfect as that or as mounted knights. Skeleton soldiers would almost be hard to find a medieval fantasy RPG you couldn't use them for. The human hero mini would work great for a player character. So we're left with the rune golem and the carrion lancer. The golem could be used as a regular large-sized stone golem, but with its 4 arms you might give it an extra attack per round. As for the carrion lancer, I personally removed the skeletal rider and now it's an overgrown carrion crawler. Just beef those stats up a bit and there you go. And as a nice bonus, you're spared the problem that often comes with Warhammer minis, with these all coming on bases sized perfectly for 1-inch grids. Expansion sets do contain several units of more unique natures though, so their compatibility varies. But of course, if the idea of an elf riding in on a dire moose appeals to you, you can always just homebrew a stat block. So how is the value for these miniatures? Well, that's actually starting to become a complicated question. You see, this game is out of production, and even was that back when I made my video over 3 years ago. However, at that point it was widely available and basically on sale as often as not. Now, however, it's getting harder to find, especially at good prices. The core set, with its 48 miniatures total, is definitely a good buy if you can find it at $60 or less. Even at $100, these are still worth getting. And though it's currently sold out on Amazon, taking a quick look at eBay, I see the complete set being sold for as low as $20. Due to their overall good quality and high compatibility with TTRPGs, the miniatures in the core set gets a big thumbs up from me. As for the expansion sets, I do think a lot of them are worth getting as well. However, the prices vary greatly, and so does the compatibility of the different minis in them. All in all, I still highly recommend getting the Runewars core set. Though not perfect, the miniature's main flaw is the seam lines, and that's not exactly uncommon. On the other hand, the ease of assembly and painting, as well as their high compatibility with just about all medieval fantasy TTRPGs, makes them perfect for anyone starting out with miniatures for D&D or similar games. So if you find this set at a cheap or reasonable price, and you don't already have a bunch of skeletons or soldiers, you might want to grab yourself a copy. And with that, I want to thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video. Like, comment, subscribe, all that good stuff, and I'll see you in the next one.